to watch is a live stream that I recorded live. Now, if the content that you find doesn't really match what you're looking for, it's very possible that this is a video that's part of a series. So if it doesn't make sense where you're finding this particular video, then just click on the description down below and you will find a link that will take you to the full series, and you can start with video number 1 and go through all of the videos in sequence. If you like the content and it helps you out, then great. If you'd like more information, then you can always check me out at FileMakerMagazine.com. Alright, and hello, welcome back to yet another video. We are going to be breaking down the while function today. If you've watched the earlier videos, one of the things that I am most, well actually, the video after this one, we will be getting into the while function. I'm ahead of myself. We are going to be taking a look at installing a tool that helps us as we are developing, and that is a text expansion tool. And that is because I have a pre-formatted while function that I like to use. So let's head into the Finder. I'll create a new window and we'll go to my applications. All right, there are a number of applications that are available to you in order to do text expansion, both on the Windows side and on Macintosh. This is just one that I think somebody sent me and I happened to get used to installing, called Typinator. Now this makes it much easier for me to code very quickly within FileMaker when I have pre-structured data that I'm working with. When we head over to FileMaker here, as I close that window, we show the data viewer, and when we're working in the data viewer, we took a look a lot earlier, well not a lot earlier, but a few videos back, we took a look at this structure right here, where we have data in a much cleaner format, easier to read this let function. In fact, in a previous video, I started to type FMLET, expecting that I was going to get an expansion of some pre-formatted code, yet I did not. And that was because my tool was not installed. Hence, on my platform here, I have not installed anything other than having the applications. But Typinator is what you saw. You can go search for that. I didn't go get a browser window and bring that up to search for it, but I will bring up a browser window for us to go to My Tool Collection. Now, if you are following along, if you're on a Macintosh, then you will have access to all of my shortcuts that I use throughout this series if you choose. Of course, you would have to go purchase Typinator. Otherwise, you will have to copy some of them, and I'll do my best to show them as needed when I use them. FileMakerMagazine.com is where we're going to go right now. So if you head to the URL FileMakerMagazine.com, that's where we're going to find my particular collection of snippets. Also, I guess this is a good opportunity. If you want to be informed, you can use this mailing list thing and sign up on the magazine website if you want to get emails about when I'm going to do specific future things or other videos. We'll close that for right now. But on resources, the link right here on the website, we'll click on that, and when that loads, I will scroll down, and down in the bottom, I've posted this here a long time ago. You can see we've got this link right here, Matt's Typinator Snippets. Now I'm going to download that. I will allow my website to download, and I will go show that. In fact, it's already been expanded out and normally comes as a zip file on my other normal account. We will go ahead and hide the browser there. And so Typinator, I'm going to bring it up with a keyboard shortcut, which is one that I like to assign, but this is what Typinator looks like, and we'll back off a little bit here. Typinator is basically a collection of shortcuts that expand out to other things. So if you haven't worked with the text expansion tool, I'll take the time to go through it a little bit here. In fact, I forgot to set my timer, but I will do that right now. We'll set it for about 12 minutes right there. We can load a typeset from anywhere else. Now, I just downloaded that typeset. It is right here. It ends in the extension for this particular expansion program, .tyset. Now, when I double-click this, what's going to happen is my FileMaker code, you can see where formerly there was nothing right here in terms of FileMaker code, but now all of a sudden I have added a lot of my expansions, and here's where things get really useful with an expansion tool. Now that I have Typinator here, and Typinator just, as soon as you type the sequence of characters, it just automatically expands out. So we can see right here, I've got most of my expansions prefixed with the FM designation, and that's just a prefix that I chose to use. So if I type in FM data, or if I type in FM eval or FM exists, I'm going to leave it up to you to go through all of these. Some of them will not make sense. Some of them are just pieces of CSS that I use when I'm modifying layout things. We'll get into that in a much future video. Some of them include technologies that maybe you might not use immediately, but here I can see this FM grep. If you're not familiar with grep, which is a command line tool which allows you to use what are known as regular expressions, this will certainly look like gobbledygook. But pay attention to the fact that you've already learned this lesson right here. This is how I make my code easy to understand. You've got the input, the options, each of the variables, you can read those. So the while function, in fact, you can search here for certain things. So I'll type in while, and what's really nice is this search feature within Typinator allows it to highlight wherever it sees this keyword of while, and we can go right to the FM while. You can see that what I've added is I've added an extension here that is simply just a different way to look at a particular function. Also the let function, let's look at that one. The FM let, there it is right there. So there is my expansion of the let function. So let's talk about what this does, or how Typinator works. This is just particular to Typinator. It may be different for a different expansion tool that you're going to use, whether it's on Windows or what have you. If you do use a Windows expansion tool, or you are familiar or have a preference towards one, please leave your comments down below and let other people know about the tool if you're on Windows or even on Macintosh. So when we look at this, we can see what I've done is I have simply made this into my preferred format of a let function. Now when we look at FileMaker, we saw that the let function, it is optional that you have these brackets. You don't have to use them. We will look at this when we look at the while function, just to go over it again, how you look at a function and determine what's optional versus what's not. But in here, you can see this little sequence right here. Now that is not a piece of FileMaker code. That is specific to TextExpander, or this particular tool. In fact, when we go right here over to the side, let's see if I can make it even a little bit smaller. There we go. My head shouldn't be blocking that. You can, in all of the text that you're going to put in here, select a certain point and then make something be inserted automatically. You can see right here when I select, we'll scroll to the side here, that I, in my expansion, can automatically have input for me the current day, the current month, the current year, week, time, etc., a key, an input field, calculation, all kinds of stuff. And let's see if I have to zoom out here. Literal control variable. I don't know where it is in here. I would have to take the time that I don't want to take the time having you be bored with. But in essence, throughout all of these options, I just have to know and remember that this bracket caret, or excuse me, brace caret brace is what determines where the insertion point goes to. So when we go over to FileMaker, and we are creating a new watch variable, we're going to start testing our code, and I'm going to type in FileMaker's let function. FileMaker will expand out to something that is a lot less accommodating for me to just start writing code. In fact, here I would have to get rid of all of this and know that let requires at least one variable and a separation with a result. And that's what I would happen to have to know. But if I type in FM let, you can see that it expanded out my preferred formatting of the let function and puts the cursor right at the point where I want to edit. So if we type in this key sequence that I have, I can type in FM while, I can type in FM data if I'm doing a web browser, I can type FM if, which there's a certain, I like to sometimes see what is the else result of a particular thing. FM case. There is the way that I like to format a case statement instead of FileMaker's case statement, which just isn't very helpful at all. So this is what's really cool about a text expansion tool. I'm trying to think of anything else that I might have for this video. I've got 5 minutes left, but I mean, there's always something that we can learn. Why don't I just go through some of the expansions that I have in here and just sort of give you an idea of what I use. All of the functions I use super commonly or frequently. When it comes to some of the other expansions, they're just in there because I use them at one point in time, but I don't necessarily use them on a regular basis, which actually isn't too bad because what ended up happening is this ended up being sort of like a little repository of snippets for me. So let's just go through some of them and actually zoom in, and we'll back that off a little bit and we'll take a look. I need to clear that search and go through these. All right. Let's go through some of these. Alphanum. This is a super common thing that whenever you're going to filter using FileMaker's filter function, you're typically going to filter based on alpha characters, which are your A through your Z, unless you're working with foreign language, of course, and your numbers. And then these I've found they're almost always something that I use in a filter function if I just want all the alphanumeric characters. Then I can add on to this once it's been expanded with the underscore, the period, slash, any other characters that I want there extra. So that's a nice expansion. Benchmarking, this is if you're writing a script and you're setting a variable at the very beginning of a script and the very bottom of a script, you can use a global variable and you can capture timestamps of how long a script takes to run. This is when you're doing a comparative analysis between different approaches to different problems. FM button is something that I use within, also within scripting. This is taking advantage, you can see, of the get last message choice case. That's a standard function right there. You can see that I'm going all the way up to the insert. Chars. We talked about the char and the code function actually as part of this series, that it's important to know how to use both of those to look for invisibles. But there are characters that you can use as values within your string, and those values are all of the characters that we've now become used to in mobile as emojis, or many times just characters that might look good on our output. Up arrows, right arrows, left arrows, stars, a heart. Things that you can inject within text. We've got all kinds of cool things we can do in FileMaker with text. Let's go through a few more of these. FM check, that's just some SVG if I want to make an SVG, and then I would be able to change the hexadecimal value and just change the color. Clean, this is a very cool one. If you are copying, especially on the Macintosh, it also applies on Windows too, depending on the browser, but on the Macintosh, when you copy something from Safari, it comes with styling. And you'll notice that when you paste that into a FileMaker field, that styling gets applied into the field. If you don't want that to happen, you would use an auto enter calculation on a field, and this will actually remove all of the formatting. I think it also does a stripping. Using the middle words, looking at the self, we would have to put that in. I am going to let you go through a lot of these, and if you have a question on this particular video, if you've taken the time to use Typinator and download this from the magazine website, you can go through these. I'm not going to go through and explain every one of these. There's obviously a lot of them, and I would be sitting here for a lot of time going through them. This is before FileMaker even had what's known as digesting, which is a cryptographic hash, or a way that you can identify a glob of text, which could be multiple fields or what have you. So again, there will be things in here that are from my career of FileMaker development, that there are newer ways to do things. There are some fun things. This SQL, I use it a lot. FM tables. If you've not used SQL, you don't have to use FileMaker. You don't have to know SQL in order to use FileMaker's execute SQL function, which will give you metadata information about your database, such as what are all of the tables in a given FileMaker file, or what are all of the fields that are in a given FileMaker file. So I think what I want to do to wrap this video up, and I'm going to start to follow a new format. For those of you that are watching live online right now, looks like we just have 10 at this point in time. I will start to dedicate, after the 15 minutes that I go for the record, I will dedicate some time and say, okay, the lesson has ended now, and we will go into a question and answers, and I will take a look at the questions if anybody has any questions and go through those, either general or otherwise. That's why, that way people who are looking just to watch the content, they know when the content stops, and then when the questions come up, they can skip those if they want. So the last thing I want to teach you in this particular episode is working on the keyboard with the arrow keys is a very important thing when it comes to functions. So let's take a look at an example of a, I'll type in fmlet here, it will expand out, and I will type in a variable. Now, I could use the mouse in order to move and double click this particular value, but a lot of the times we want to keep our hands on the keyboard because you can get things done a lot quicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to verbally walk through the process of what my hands are doing as I'm writing some code. So I've got the variable. I was right here, I typed in var. I'm now going to use the command right arrow key in order to jump. I can jump to the end of the line, or I can jump to the beginning of the line. Putting myself at the back of the same situation, I'm now going to use the option right arrow key, and you'll see that it jumps to the end of the equal sign, and then it jumps to the end of the word. I'm now going to hold down the option and the shift key, and I'm going to use the other arrow key, the left arrow key, and I'm going to highlight that whole value right there. So rather than having moved and double clicked right here, I can mouse, or excuse me, I can key over by going option arrow, shift back arrow, and now I can type whatever I want. This is some literal text. And in order to go down, I just hit my arrow keys. There's my calculation. Again, all I have to do is option and shift in order to highlight that, and I can return var as the result. And this is a good opportunity to understand we're not getting a result. And this is something that comes with time. You have to know that because I'm using the brackets on this, this is a trailing semicolon that cannot exist, and there we go, we get our result. This is some literal text, and if I wanted to add into this, I could just sit and say line, let's call it line 7, since we've worked with that, and we'll say this is going to be get value, and we're going to be looking at our list of values. Here's the one thing that is that I tend to do. I do tend to mouse over and make selections here, because once your solution gets really large, you end up using this search. Otherwise, you have to know the table occurrence that you're wanting or the name of the field. So I could start typing right now and type in COVID, get to the table, hit my return, and then type data and get that in. And my hands never left the keyboard. Then I just grab value number 7 right now, and I can now go append that to my variable and line 7. So you can see right there we've got that last name. So if we want the space up there, again, watch this. I'm at this point, I'm going to arrow up, and then I'm not going to arrow over all the time. It takes too much time. Hold down the command key and just jump to the end and then add your space. And you can see that we got our space right there in our value. And of course, we would have to strip that DCS, but we looked at that in a previous video. So go back a couple videos if you want to see how we do that. So now that we have our expansion tool, we are good to go. We are going to be able to expand out a while function, take apart some of this text, look at the while function and any type of iterative processing such as scripting a loop. We won't be scripting it quite yet. We're looking at the loop, but I'm referring to the while function and FileMaker, the scripting loop function, in the same context because we're both just running a process over and over and over again. All right, so that is a wrap on this particular video, at least with the content. Let's see if we've got some questions that came in, and we can ask those. I will get the pop out here. And this is the opportunity for those of you that are watching live to get your questions answered. All right. Ahmed is mentioning he likes the videos. Why are his notifications not working? That I don't know. You might want to check the YouTube video or the YouTube application or the YouTube settings and look at that. And I missed this video from the beginning. I do have the DVR turned on if you're watching these live, and you can scrub and go back to that. Do you have a plan for the content, or are you just sort of improvising these? I am doing both. I've got a little bit of an idea, but I'm improvising. I'm doing this to teach people what I know, but also to give myself something to do. So there is in everything that I'm doing, I'm planning out what do I think is important about this, but I'm definitely trying to create a solution that would be valuable to other people to use. Capturing the ID right now is a really cool thing, and so that's why. Matt, can you please inform of the schedule of the live videos? I would love to follow them for a second. All right. So here, thank you, Joao. I believe that how you pronounce it. I am going to, my schedule throughout the day is a little bit random depending on the workload that I have, projects, other work, plus the magazine videos that I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to give at least an hour advance notice of when I'm going to start recording them live for those of you that want to watch these live. If I can, I'll give 2 hours. My goal is to try to do them 3 times a week because there's a couple of days that I need to focus on the magazine and other things. Starting at about 1 p.m. Pacific time. That is my goal, but of course, because we're here, all of us are, many of us, I should say, are homebound. I've got my kids here and other activities that sort of take my time. Thank you, user Mac Brian, for the training or for the comments. How do you get yourself in the video without the background? I can actually show you that if you want. Here we go. There you go. I have on my wall, I have a green screen. So if I turned that off, it is just right on the wall back behind me. There's just a green screen that I pull down. And there is an application that I'm using, which you can see right here that I'm highlighting, called OBS. And OBS will allow you to set up all kinds of capture and broadcast in order to do things. In fact, I have an expansion tool that expands out to what I use, and I will, just for those of you that are curious, my setup, I believe, is the expansion. Oh, it's in my expansion on my other account. I'll have to do that as a comment or somewhere else. That is just a list of the tools that I use. All right, and then this is the last one that we'll get to, and we'll wrap this video up. And I will be recording another one live right after this where I go through the while function. We'll be taking a look at that. Sometimes I do sit. Is there a set time you will do the presentation? Again, yes, I'm shooting for about 1 p.m. Pacific time, but it may not always be that time. It may be a little bit later, and I doubt it will ever be earlier than 1 p.m. So I would say look for any time after 1 p.m. Pacific time. Weekdays only? Nope. I may be doing the weekends as well. I mean, I'm stuck here, and depending on when I go out, I may shoot on a Saturday or a Sunday. We've got lots of times. All right, guys, and thanks for doing these. That'll be good for our comments there. That didn't add too much time to the video, but if you have questions and you want to ask them while I'm doing this live, it might help other people with learning as well. But I think that's a good wrap for this video, and if you're sticking around on the live channel, you will see me start up the next video in a few minutes here. All right, see you later.